So welcome to Becoming an Effective Hybrid Instructor. This is our second live session. We're going to try to go over a couple of key factors and then maybe a run through the module. And I do hope to have a lot more time for Q&A or to troubleshoot any tech things or Google Doc things or anything like that. The other thing I'm going to do, thank you very much, Ray. So Ray has put for you in the chat the link to our Google Slides. And then there's also a link to the accessibility resource Canvas course. Now, it's not a course. Well, I guess you could go in and do some of the practice stuff, but really what it is a resource in case you get a lot of folks telling you that your video is not accessible or you're not using heading hierarchy to be accessible. Sometimes we just think everybody understands heading hierarchy, right? And we don't stop to think that maybe it's the first time that you've heard that there's some sort of heading hierarchy and that how the screen readers read that for visually impaired students and how that helps them. So let's see. Yes, so what we'll do is, and then Kaki, what I'll do is towards the end, because we already started the session, I'll go ahead and click into this link here that you just gave me to try and figure out what's going on, right? So for your practice shells, for the most part, I believe we're asking that you not publish them, right? And one of the reasons for that is that most of the facilitators, like we have 100 courses, more than that. And so if you publish them, then later on, any due dates you put in there will come into my notifications. They come into my computer. Then from there, because I have a notification sent to my Yahoo account, they'll go there, they go into my phone, and then they go into my watch. And so I think that that's the reason why they're like, yeah, remember, tell everybody not to publish their course yet. Personally, I like it when they're published because then it behaves like a real course, a little bit more like a real course, right? I can go in student view, I can do different things, but I'm just giving you that out there. So that might not be an issue, you're not being able to publish it, but we have to check because I think it might be something else also. All right.
Well, I don't mind not publishing it, but when I open it, there's nothing on it.
Okay, so your practice shell will be completely blank. So I'm glad that you mentioned this because you have two. You have your role as student here with me, I'm your facilitator, where there's tons of stuff, right? And then you have your other shell that is your role as a teacher. As your role of teacher, they've given you a completely blank shell. Sorry, no templates. You know, maybe in the future we'll get some spiffy, template maker and we can make some templates and then just give them all to you so you can plug and play. Right now it's going to be completely blank because what we hope you can do, and this is my huge suggestion, is that you copy over your latest and greatest course that is going to be the one that you're next going to teach, either in the summer or the fall. And that way we can start working our magic from that. It's easier to do it with already a scaffold of activities and things that you like to then just kind of update, with accessibility and with equity than it is to start from scratch, clicking on that thing that says add module. That's a lot more work, I think, but it's up to you.
Okay, I'm fine then in that case. I didn't even notice the other shell with all the
all the bells and whistles. Yeah. Okay, that's fine.
And then for today, should I be opening the Google Slides or the links that you sent us?
I'm going to share it on the screen, but sometimes it's nice to see it on your own also. And that way you can move ahead of me if I'm going too slow. Eventually, well, let me see, we only have 8 people. So we're supposed to have breakout rooms. I think that what we'll do is we'll have 2 breakout rooms for each. And then I'll just let you guys pick the kind of activity you want to do in terms of brainstorming ideas. How does that sound? Because normally we have like 50 people in these sessions. So there's a lot more room for a lot more breakouts. All right, well, so that there, Kaki, when you come into our homepage here, I'm going to keep this homepage the same for the duration of the course. I'm not going to switch them out. What you will notice is announcements here at the top. I'll try to keep it to 2, so it's not crazy up here. And then here, the only thing I might do is this start here orientation around Wednesday. I might make this go to week 2. For now, it's going to the top, to the orientation welcome module, right? Okay. And so if we were to click on the start orientation button, it will take us to the top of the modules list. And the way the modules have been set up, you do need to open every single item, page, if it's a page, an assignment, a quiz, or a discussion, you have to open all of them in order to be able to unlock a new module for yourself. Right now, we have a couple that are marked as done. So there are a couple here where you would need to go into the page, open it, find the mark as done button, click on that, and that will like release you and let you move forward. So that's kind of the navigation portion of this. And it is a better practice that we're sharing with our colleagues and peers, because what it does, it allows students to have these green check marks on the side. And it's a nice way for them to keep track of where they left off. Because at the end, all the modules start to look the same. There's not a whole lot that makes them look different. A check mark here, maybe, you know, I put a little Easter egg for Easter when we have Easter break, but there's not a whole lot that changes the modules. They look very, very similar. So here we had a lot, the welcome module. It's kind of a lot just to take a look at. All of the assignments are still open, which means that you can still jump in and participate. You're just probably not going to get a whole lot of reply backs because we've kind of moved to week 2. Then we've had our learning module for week 1 here and some optional level ups. Yes, and so in the level up libraries, technically speaking, you should be able to come up to this level up because it's been enabled to be editable by students, meaning AKA you. You should be able to come up here, click the edit button, and then scroll into into this table, and then just plug in your information. You should be able to click right here, click here, and then click here. Yes, oh, yay. and so, but we'll go over this again later on, Carol, if you want, okay, just in case because it is weird, but yes, for the most part, I'm not the only one who's a dictator in my class. We have a certain way our course we need to run. We don't need students coming in and changing our pages. So it's not recommended to click on that button that lets students change our pages, right? That could be chaos, right? Pandemonium. But there's some pages where we want them to contribute, especially if you want to have something that's a learning library that continues on. You know, so that can be nice in that way. What other thing? Let me go back into the modules here just to make sure that Kaki is also with us on this. We have our first synchronous meeting. And so in there you have the agenda for that meeting. You have some hybrid first thoughts, which is an assignment. It's a Google Doc. You should be able to just go in there and then plug in your information. And then we have the recording for that first meeting right here. As we go in, we've got our agenda for the second meeting. This here, that's a second BEHI Zoom meeting recording. After we're done, I go through the process to make this video accessible. Sometimes it takes long because these are 1-hour sessions. So it takes a long time to caption them. But I'll put in the video as soon as I get the link. I'll embed that. And then the captioning will just take a little bit more time. So I appreciate your patience on that. And then we begin week 2. And so we get to talk about the hybrid loop just a little bit. So here we are. What I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into our agenda just so you can get a feel for what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about the hybrid loop. We love talking about that. And the student-centered teaching on campus and online. And we're going to pass the mic. This is a reminder in the breakout groups that if you feel that you've contributed and maybe somebody's a little quiet, you can just go ahead and a friendly, hey, I pass the mic on to Chris, right? And so pass the mic to see if we're a small group anyway. So if we can get everyone to share on that. And then I'm going to go through the walkthrough of module 2. Here's a copy of the slides, and here was a Tech Connect Zoom in case, but all of you are here, so all of you found it. So here we go with our slides. Let me go up to them. First one. So we always try to engage our learners, right? And this is a little bit small. I can do the share if you want. Do you want me to do the slideshow so you can see it bigger? Or is this okay? Is this too weird? It's okay? Okay. All right. So what we do is that then we talk a lot about the flipped classroom. And a lot of folks were doing this well before the language of hybrid even came into our consciousness, right? So the flipped classroom basically meant that what we were doing was that we were using Canvas, first of all, or Blackboard, or a D2L. I mean, there was tons, right, of different things. I kind of can't even remember them all. There were, Moodle was another one. And so we were using those to keep our syllabi. We're keeping key documents we wanted our students to have. We would sometimes give them, we would use it to interact with them, maybe a discussion here or there. And so it was a way for us to communicate with students, right? To share information without having to kill a bunch of trees. And that's what I used it for. I would give them one syllabus the very first day of class. They got their syllabus and I would not print or go visit the copier again. I would tell them everything that you need is going to be in the course management system. And so if you lose your syllabus, that's okay. Just go and take a look. So they wouldn't lose it anymore once they realized that they had to print it out on their own if they lost it or misplaced it. So that solved that issue. And I didn't have to feel like a tree killer anymore. So that's how we were using it. And then we were coming to class, and then in class, we were mostly having our quizzes, exams. We were doing some discussions, but we weren't really connecting both, I don't think. I think we were using both at the same time, but not really connected like that. And so, but it starts to be part of what we were thinking about, that using the CMS, the course management system, as a tool or also as an archive, because it meant that we always could keep those documents that would get lost in our file system, or forget it. If our computer crashed, then that was it. We're like, hey, I can't retrieve my thesis, my dissertation. You know, it's an archaic system of storing information, but in our course management system, we could always keep the latest and greatest there. Let's see here. So this again shows kind of that idea of the flipped. And I don't know if you can see the whole slide. I hope you can. So for example, on, at least on my screen, on the left, it says traditional classroom. So we would go in, right on the blackboard. I got to use blackboards and green boards, and then the whiteboards now, the dry erase boards. And then we tell them, okay, this is what we're doing today. These are the learning outcomes, if we even thought about learning outcomes back then. For me, I was always kind of thinking business-like. So I was thinking, this is what we're doing. This is our agenda. This is our to-do list. I had 3-hour classes at night. And so I would tell them, listen to me, let me get through everything. And then we'll have more time to do other things you guys want to do. But let me do what I need to do. Let me share what I have to share with you. And so then it would be good, because then the students would get on with our discussions. Instead of talking about the party last night, they would try to move through our activity. You know, and so normally what I would do is let the first group who came up with their questions and answers, they would be dismissed and get to leave early. And then I keep everybody else. And so that only happened twice, because then everybody else was on top of getting their small group to work instead of chatting is nice, but you know, once it's 8:30 at night, you kind of just wanted things to wrap up. You know? And so then we had different techniques then to do that. Then the part of the flip classroom would be to present them with the movie. So let's say I don't want to watch Soundtrack for a Revolution in my class, because that's like an 1.5-hour documentary. And as much fun as it is, there's no popcorn in the classroom. So what I would do is put it in the CMS, the course management system, and then tell them, watch Soundtrack for a Revolution, take notes. We're going to discuss that later in class. But I was still not having them put any brainstorms, any assignments, or any initial discussions in the CMS. Right? It was still, bring your notes, we'll deal with it in class, but watch it there, because I don't want to take an 1.5 hours to watch it in the classroom, right? So those are kind of the ideas that we had. Let's see. So then here, what we're asking is to think of the divide. Like, it doesn't have to be two separate things, right? So for example, because it's student-centered and that the active learning happens in both modalities, in the classroom, and then also in the CMS and Canvas, then what I would do instead is say, here's Soundtrack for a Revolution. Please take your notes. upload your notes, as that would be an assignment, come into the discussion, share your initial takeaways from the film. We will discuss all of this in the class when we get together on Monday. And then after we would come together, we would discuss. Some students who hadn't seen it were a little bit embarrassed to not really know what was going on. And I never put them on the spot or anything, but then their peers, and we could be in groups because it was in COVID. So we could huddle, right? And so they would be in their groups, then they would talk about it, they would fill in their classmates. I told them, everybody here can get an A. Don't be selfish with knowledge, share. We're not in competition with each other. We're trying to help each other out. And so then the students then would share with their peers what had gone out in the film. They would share what they thought was the most interesting, the most innovative, or something that they just really never even knew had happened, in history. And so after that share, then they would come back then to Canvas again, and that's where they would take the quiz. But now they've already had like 3 opportunities to be exposed to the documentary, to the language within documentary, the big takeaways that they had, that they shared with their classmates and peers, shared back to them in discussion, and now they were going to be assessed. The assessment for these are very low stakes. They basically are like homework. 10 questions, multiple choice, true, false. This is my big, huge recommendation. If you have final exams, that you segment them out so that one portion is true, false, multiple choice. And if you need to have essays, that you can still do it in quiz format, right? Because it has a timer and all of that fun stuff. Then you do a second quiz part 2, and that one will be short answer essays. Why? Because Canvas will take care of the multiple choice true, false for you, where you only need to take a look at that to give them positive feedback and to check to see if everybody got something wrong on a question, then maybe the question is not phrased well, or in my case, I might have put in the wrong answer accidentally. So it does give kind of that space so that you can then not worry about the multiple choice stuff. Canvas will deal with that. And now you can focus your attention on giving that positive feedback on the essay and the short answer. So I'm going to pause right here just to see if there are any questions as to kind of this hybrid loop, or the bringing together of those both modalities. Yes, Heidi.
Yes, I mean, I said this in the writing, and as I started looking at this week's stuff, and the same question comes up, that I feel like I'm getting half of the content, I'm covering half of the content that I could cover. Like if I'm really, even if we just described about watch the movie, then do a discussion about the movie, then we're going to come to class and discuss the movie again. And now it's been this full week on this thing that normally would have been just one class session, one half, and then I have a second class session to move on to the next text.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, I mean, so much of what I've heard between AB 705 and online teaching has been, you can do less with more, and have fewer essays but go deeper and all that stuff. But I also feel like there's diminishing returns at some point. Like I already feel like I've cut so much out of my classes. Like right now my classes feel, they're better this semester, but it feels a little ridiculous compared to what I used to cover. And like, I just feel like this is crap. Like
yeah, so how do you cover more, or at least the same as you used to? And I almost feel like with the hybrid model that you could cover the same, so it doesn't have to be a full week. Because of the Canvas portion of that, the students can be doing that between the times that they meet you. So that, and well, at least in my example of the documentary, my cutting that whole documentary out to let my students view that on their own saves me, I get all that time back in the classroom, which I wanted. And so those are some ways, and I tell my students, I'm like, hey, this documentary is like PG-13. Or some of the clips, I'm like, do not share this in the living room with all of your kids and grandkids, please. So just a heads up, because they think it's academic, that it's okay to share, but like Soundtrack for a Revolution shows lynching. And so then, so I let them know. So, and I say, you're welcome to share with your family, but review it first. And so what happens is that they do, my students will say, yes, I mean, I thought it was so powerful. we shared it on the weekend with family members. And so it's their sharing and explaining is also the learning part. Now, it's not an outcome we can measure. We can't measure shared with family and explained what was going on in the 50s and the 60s. But it is still something that sticks with them. And then later on, when they come back and they're writing, in my class, they have critical analysis. So they have these 2 to 3 page essays that are supposed to be research, mini papers, if you will. And so what happens, it totally reflects on their writing that they have shared and talked about, the documentary of the reading. So we can work more, we can brainstorm more, Heidi, on getting that content back that you've lost because of the online. And so maybe the hybrid will be a good modality for you. Yeah, so great comments. And yes, Ray.
Sorry, my computer wasn't responding to me. I kind of wanted to respond to Heidi. We're a little bit of an English heavy cohort here. And so I thought, the one thing I think hybrid for English, and we kind of chunk our classes, like for 10 minutes, I'm going to lecture or whatever, then you're gonna think, then you're gonna pair, then you're gonna share, then we're gonna move on. So like it becomes a little bit more 10 minutes, we're gonna talk about the thesis. You read that over the weekend, you did some brainstorming that you posted to Canvas, we're gonna talk about what you did there, then you're gonna revise it. 10 minutes, let's look at the readings for this essay that you read through Canvas. And so like the chunking becomes a little different focus. Does that make sense?
I think so. I mean, so it's a little bit more of a recap of because I think what I'm doing right now, and I don't know if, because I'm teaching hybrid right now, I don't know if I'm doing it well or badly or whatever, but in the Canvas portion, they're doing some readings, some annotations, a discussion board or a Padlet or whatever they're doing, where they're interacting and submitting something to me, whatever they're doing. And then in class, the most we're getting is some little reference to that or some sort of quickie thing to that. But we're not doing a full discussion of those the way I would do if this were a twice a week face-to-face class. It's sort of, you did that discussion online. And maybe it was some of what I'm losing, because I know in reading that today, I'm not jumping in on those discussion boards with them usually, partly because I sort of feel like, do I comment on everybody's? Do I, become like, I don't know how to manage it yet. And so maybe it feels a little bit like, I don't know what's happening in the discussions, but I don't know if that.
Ray, I just want to say, you don't have to comment on every single one,
right?
Not in the discussion board, in the comments and the feedback and the speed grader. Yes, at least a bit to every individual student, but not in the big, huge discussion. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, and so I think a way to like bring that back in, not that you have to like rehash the discussion, but like you could do a quick skim Sunday night, like pick out, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Very adorable.
She's just
Very
talking
cute.
to us.
Wants to participate, I love it.
The little one is like, hey, play with me. So a thing you could do is you could skim through the discussion, like pick out a few that you're like, oh, that's really smart and poignant. Let's focus on that. And then a few that like maybe need a little bit more development or ideas that like people didn't get into much, and like bring that in for just even 5 minutes. And there's the loop, right? Does that help?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's great. Yeah, and it's good. I sometimes wish that we could do these cohorts by discipline, but it does help to hear somebody else. Like, I think it always helps me to hear STEM folks explain, where they're getting stuck, because I'm thinking, oh my God, they're doing that. Like, can I do that in poli-sci? That would be awesome if I could somehow do that what they're trying to do. So yeah, so any other comments on this, on sort of that loop? It's kind of like the big, huge takeaway from this course is just really thinking about how to bring things together. Yeah, okay. Well, what I'm going, there's some chat here. Let me see. Was there anything? Oh, thank you for sharing the links. So the links that Ray has been sharing for you are to the slides and also to the accessibility resource Canvas course, because those can really help you, especially if you hear anybody saying that's not accessible because you're not using the rich content editor bullets or outlines or whatever, because it breaks it down. So it's a really great course. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share back again.
As she's doing that, I also want our little cohort to know that I am a digital lab coach and an accessibility ambassador. So like I can help you too.
Yay.
Too.
Yeah, really. And I don't know who I was I telling you, Chris, maybe earlier last week, that online learning is really a collaborative kind of community, that there isn't a whole lot of stinginess in it. I find that most people are willing not only to help, to brainstorm, but also to even share. They're like, oh, you like my discussion? Let me just share that with you and you can retailor it, right? So that people are not, it's not a waste of time to learn how to do something, but we learn also by editing other people's stuff. And so that, thank you very much, Ray, for mentioning that. And we'll probably need your help during the summer, just so you know, as people start to get panicky. Why panicky? Because in the fall, unless you've been trained with BEHI, you're not going to be able to teach online, right? So, you know, the schedules are set, but not everybody's been trained. So we'll see how we survive the summer with our trainings. So the other thing here, the suggestion is to create a hybrid schedule, especially if you have these ideas of when things should happen, and that it shouldn't take 2 class meetings to cover something that normally covered 1 meeting, for example. So that, you know, having a calendar or even drawing it out, mapping out, okay, here they're going to talk about this and they're going to discuss, and then we're going to come to the classroom and then they will have their quiz and that loops them back in. That sometimes actually seeing it visually helps. So I do a lot of drawings and I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. So I draw them out a lot on paper before I ever even create a rubric or anything, because it just helps me move things around without the frustration of edit, save, right? So this is the idea that there is value in both, in the online learning environment and in the physical classroom. If there weren't value in the physical classroom, they would just close up our brick and mortar universities and colleges, because it is more cost effective to have a bunch of faculty online than it is to have to pay for custodial, for, you know, now the whole COVID cleaning specialty, for all of those things, for the electricity, for, you know, some folks need to have air conditioning. We don't at my college, but, you know, so all of the cost of running a college, if they didn't think that there was value in being physically in a classroom together, we would all become, you know, the Phoenix University or whatever that is, the online university. You know, so there is value in that. And I think that that's why many of our chairs are trying to see if we can slowly move away from the now new comfort of online teaching to come back to the classroom and to share with our students. Our students do need us. And, you know, it's amazing how much just a body language, even when we're not hugging our students anymore, right? But that they can see how much appreciation we have for them and for the work. So let's see here. Oops, clicked on the wrong place. Clicking on the wrong place. Okay. So why is hybrid needed? You know, what are the benefits to creating a hybrid option for the course? Which course? Not all courses will be good as a hybrid, in a hybrid modality. And which course first? If this is the first time, which one and why? Now, a lot of you are already teaching hybrid. So I don't think you were given the choice of which course should you do hybrid. I mean, they probably just said, hey, you want to teach hybrid? You're like, they're like, yes, classroom and online. And you probably said, yes, sure, I'll teach it. You know, and so you jumped in, you know, full force, 2 feet. And so that's great, I think. But I think that you can have some time to really think, next class I develop, do I want to develop and design it to be a hybrid course? You know, so now you can start to think about how you're going to do that. And it's at the forefront, hybrid, accessible, equitable, you know, so it's not something that you've already have to just swim and figure it out. It's something that you can actually plan. And let's see, are your classrooms ready? So the question about classrooms ready would be that a question even if we were not in COVID, right? Meaning, What do you need in your classroom to be able to work? Most of the time, old school, I would even teach under a tree if I was given an opportunity. But sometimes our whiteboards do help. It does help to have desks. It does help to have a smart classroom, meaning it has a computer. Right now, we know that we need to have webcams, maybe in speakers that function. Why is that? Because like the orientation, a lot of times we are walking students through, this is the homepage. This is where you click start. This is where you find any of my office hours. This is where you find the module. We're going to operate through the module navigation. And that's where we show and explain. You must click on every item to unlock the new module for yourself, right? Do not get frustrated. New modules won't be open until the Wednesday, so these things are show and tell a lot of times. I can't really show and tell that under a tree. So that at least for my class, if they were going to be hybrid, even though it's not HighFlex, because that's a whole different conversation, that I still would run through Canvas and the modules, and I would pause, make sure I could see everybody's eyes, make sure that it seems like they're following along, right? When I see people who just the eyes go square, right? And I'm like, okay, I better hold these folks back. And then they tell me that they've never even typed. They don't own a computer. They don't know where the computer labs are. Then I'm like, okay, so I have my challenge, right? And my challenge is not only that I'm going to teach them political science and all of the topics, and to be good citizens, but I'm going to teach them how to use a computer. And it's a skill that they can use for the rest of their lives, because then now they can transfer and not feel like they're behind anyone, because they will be familiar with how to work in operating CMS. They will know what a browser is. They will know how to apply. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but we're not really submitting paper applications anywhere. So our students do need to be computer literate. And although I'm not teaching a computer class, that is one of the added benefits, right, of them taking a hybrid class, is that they have you now. They don't have to be out there, if they don't understand Canvas, kind of lost. They will always be able to come back to you, and then you can show them, it's here, it's there, click here. This is how you send an email through Canvas Inbox. So here we have a couple of, I guess it's the language, right? And the language keeps changing. Somebody used bisynchronous the other day. I'm like, what? Bisynchronous. I'm like, did you just invent that? That sounds made up. So that there are a lot of terms out there. So we have the fully online asynchronous that has the most flexibility. And the reason it has the most flexibility is because the students are not pinned to time and space. And for the most part, the office hours are offered in tandem, like different days, different kind of time of the day. Or like for me, I set them up with my students. You tell me when you want to meet, and I'll try to figure out how we can meet, right? So there's that. We have the fully online synchronous. What does that mean? It means that meeting times are on the schedule of classes. So I've had some of those. I will tell you right now, those are not my favorite, right? They're not, because I get low enrollment. Students don't enroll because it doesn't clear what their schedule, and they see that it's a Tuesday meeting from 2 to 4:30. That's an icky time to meet and online or anytime, I guess. So those are not my favorite, but that it does exist. And for many folks, it does work well for students that they want to touch base with their professor live. They want it to be a live interaction. They don't want it to be, I send an email and then I wait for the response, or I send my assignment and I'm waiting for the feedback, right? So for many students that does work. There's a 50-50 hybrid balance, which means it's asynchronous. They do their stuff in Canvas and then they come into the classroom in person. And that's what this course is mostly about. The hybrid loop is mostly this one, this 50-50 hybrid balance. Now, it doesn't have to be 50-50. I'll just tell you right now, you are the boss of your hybrid course. If you want this to be, 1090, you can do that, right? Some folks only have an orientation in the classroom. Everything else is online in Canvas. And then they have like the final exam. Those are the only 2 times that they come into the classroom. And that works for those folks, right? So you will find something that works for you, whether it's once a week, once every other week, twice a week, as long as it's in the schedule of classes, then you're good to go until further notice. Until somebody out there figures out that they can't give us that much freedom. Let's see, can you hear it? Can you hear the politics? Let's see so then the other thing now to add to all of the things that we worry about in terms of hybrid is that now we need to deal with COVID related issues. And so that means, are our classrooms prepared to be able to have students? How? Our course policies, this is where it really comes in. Course policies, people are still getting ill, right? And so, what do we do if we have a requirement that all in-class classes have to be attended? Then what do we do? Because we're not recording them. At least in the hybrid setup, we're not recording our in-classroom activities and lectures and all of that. So then what do we do with those students who missed out, that 2-hour session, 1.5-hour session, 3-hour session? If you're doing high flex, then you would be recording your in-classroom sessions. And in that case, the course policy on attendance is a lot more fluid than it would be in the hybrid situation, right? Because they can't make that up, that lecture they can't make up. And I don't know, I never give a lecture for one student again. So I don't know if I'm just being mean, but I'm like, don't miss. Come in with your mask. So again, these are just things to brainstorm and think about. And then we have some district-wide data that you might find interesting. And again, here's where the math people can help me out a little bit more. But as I understand this chart that we had in spring 2021, we have our first time that we start to have students come back to a classroom in some way. And mostly these folks were STEM folks because they needed to have access to the labs. And they were very careful the way they managed this and the way they checked everything. It was before people were fully vaccinated, so it was a little frightening also. And that's when I stopped going to campus, to my office. Once people started to come back, I'm like, these folks are not vaccinated. I don't think I want to be out here. But what they showed was that the fully online folks had a 75% success rate. And that the hybrid folks, meaning they already start to have people coming to the classroom. Now, these folks were not trained in hybrid learning and teaching modalities unless they did outside reading, because we still didn't have the hybrid course, yet the training course, but we still had pretty good success rate. You can see there that the 76% I think is really great, because that meant that the faculty were able to intuitively think about how to help students and student-centered learning to create that success, that they were somehow able to wrap that around. And then we had our face-to-face, very few also, but that was a 71% success rate. So a little bit of a decline there, but it must have been because the classes had to be small. I believe, if I'm not incorrect, that they had staggered classes. We have angels as teachers. We already knew that. But this is proof, because what they were doing was that they were teaching some students on Monday, Wednesday for the same section, and then other students Tuesday, Thursday, so that they could have smaller groups in the classroom. And like, did you guys get paid double? No, they didn't get paid double, but that's double work. I don't know. Do I just see it as double work? Now you guys know why I'm not a union rep. So I saw that as double work, right? They had to transport themselves more time, they had to prep. And then not only that, it's difficult to teach the same thing twice to the same group, because then you forget, what did I teach the other group? What did I ad lib and teach these new people? So that was kind of that. And then in terms of non-synchronous or asynchronous and synchronous. So the asynchronous means that there aren't any live sessions that are required. If there are any live sessions at all, these are those kind of like, hey guys, you guys want to know about the review? I'm going to do a review on the good draft. You want to come in? It's open. And so it's very voluntary, optional like that. So it doesn't mean that students were never meeting with their teachers. It just meant that it wasn't on the schedule of classes and it wasn't required. So here you can see that 100% online, there's an asynchronous 75%. And then for the synchronous, meaning there were meetings on the schedule of classes that were Zoom meetings, right? Nobody's coming to the classroom. This is all still using Canvas and Zoom. That there's a 76%. So that's pretty good. Now, the other thing is that these, it goes like that, 76, 75 in the spring and then the fall and summer and then cyber session, that those numbers didn't really vary too much, that they kind of stayed right there. I would love to see like 100% success rate, but that I've not been able to get there yet. So maybe you guys have tips on that. Okay, so we're going to come to our breakout rooms. What time do we have? We don't have a whole lot of time. Because we don't have a lot of time and the breakout rooms take a little bit more time than we can. I'm going to just go ahead and give you the slides. You can all plug in whatever information you want for any of the slides. There are 4 sets of 4 slides. So one of them is going to be on student interaction online, what works in online learning, active learning and online interactive tools. Room 2 is going to be on COVID safe on-campus active learning. So how do we do that without getting everybody sick again? Room 3 is going to be about using games and gamification. Those normally take extra tools, right? External tools, and sometimes we just don't have time. But I do use a couple, and those are mostly meant to be reviewed before a quiz, you know, an actual quiz or an assignment. And then room 4 was going to be on equity and hybrid learning, right? So right now what we're going to do is that you are all going to be the slide writers, organizers, and then at the end, whoever wants to volunteer to present, we can do that. And then again, here's the whole pass the mic. And the reason we're doing this is because I became too verbose today. So let me go ahead. Does everyone have access to the slides? Yes, Ray, I think that you put those in there. Yeah. So you should be able to access these slides. You should be able to edit because they've been set up so that you can just go ahead and plug your name in here or wherever you want, and then start to think about what active learning looks like. So you can even put yourself in the mindset of a student. If you're a student and you're online, what makes you feel like you're engaged with either the content? It's normally the content, so then you can be engaged in the assessment, right? And we're right now kind of just looking for measurable outcomes in terms of the assessments, something tangible that we can grab, right? So learning, knowing, that's really hard to measure. So again, you can go ahead, feel free to type in there. Then our second, and this is a continuation sort of this online tool, so Kahoot. I use that. I have a map on Central America and the Caribbean. And so what I do is that I have a game in Kahoot. And so we join up, we do it either in the classroom or have it online, depending. And then they participate in that. And so it gives them, you know, bragging rights. And but then it also helps prepare them for the quiz that they later have to take. Hypothesis, great tool for, especially for English teachers and students, because then they can annotate right there on the document. And those documents can be embedded within Canvas. And those documents can also be external, meaning they could be a website, right? And so then the students go in and they annotate and then they can comment on that, which is really great. I haven't used iClickers probably in 10 years. And I've never used iClickers in the online environment. So when I was using them, they were only in the classroom, right? And so the iClickers were good because those help refresh on key terms, you know, and then students get a kick out of, you know, of being the first to answer or getting them right. So it's nice to have those sort of things. And then also we have examples of breakout rooms. Breakout rooms work really well if you have a group that's too big to manage to have everybody talk and participate in the main room. It helps also if you need to have the students who have more opportunity for learning, who may not know how to do something. you keep them in the main room and you release everyone else to the breakout rooms, where you know that you'll have student leaders who can manage the breakout. And that gives you time for a little bit more one-on-one or one-on-two or one-on-three with students either who have accessibility, learning opportunities, or who may have, maybe they're learning how to use Canvas, or maybe the reason why they're not participating is that they don't know how to type. And it's not just, well, I touch type just because my mother made me learn. but a lot of folks still hunt and peck. And so that slows down the being able to quickly communicate something they want to type out. And so that might mean that if I have an activity where I'm like, okay, everybody in chat, go ahead and tell me the 3 steps of whatever. Well, if they're hunting and pecking and they're not familiar with the keyboard, that's going to take them more time to get that answer right? Or to even get the answer out. So let's see, what else do we have? We have the COVID safe on campus. So again, what does that mean to have a COVID friendly campus? I don't know if you've noticed, but when you're with a group of friends or family, you're all very cautious at first. That's me. I got my mask, I got my gloves, I'm cautious. After about, I want to say about an hour, that's it. All of a sudden, my mask is hanging under my chin. The gloves are already making my hands sweat, so I take them off, throw them out. And now it's like someone's throwing a baby at me, and I'm like, how can I resist? So I don't know if that's, maybe it's just unique to my family, but I think that when we're in a space together, we quickly forget that there's still, an epidemic out there. And I think it's because we can see that people are not coughing or sneezing, right? But the very first cough that rings out in a room, everybody's back on with their masks, because it's a very physical, visual reminder. We love to forget that we're in that. So how do we make our classrooms safe? How do we reassure our students that they are safe and that their families are safe, right? Because in whatever we get, they take back home. So there's that. We're optimistic. And then here again, there's the gamification, Quizlet, Jeopardy. I like using Kahoot because it's easy and it's free, but you might find some other things. And we do have a lot of K through 12 people who have been really at the forefront of this, right? Because they want to engage their K through 12 students. We feel like adults don't need to be engaged, but I often say that we're edutainers. If we go into the classroom and we're really boring, that's it. We're going to lose a bunch of people, and we're going to hear snoring, at least in my class, because it's late at night. And it's always, I think it's hilarious when I hear snoring in my classroom. I'm like, oh my God, that means I better pep it up over here. Maybe I'll get out the maracas or the clave or something, make some music, make some noise. So again, what can we do? Because we are edutaining. So how do we do that to keep them alert and lively? And then again, I don't even know why this is the last slide on equity and hybrid learning. Really should be the first slide, because when we start to think about equity from the beginning, that means that it can carry through and it lasts. When we're thinking about it at the end, it means that sometimes it's a half-baked thought, or we're just slapping it on the end of something, right? And so here we have some resources that you can go ahead and click on, just so you can see what we're talking about in terms of equity. And having said that, we're going to have a conference, a pedagogy conference, if memory serves, this Friday. And you can sign up through Grow, through your Insight, your 4CD Insight and Grow. And it should be pretty interesting. We're going to have keynote speakers, and folks, your colleagues are going to share different things that they've done to update their course syllabus, to update the whole notion of ungrading, which I can't do. I'm too points focused. The points for me are the way that I escape liability. So because I have a rubric and it's attached to points and the points don't lie, I don't know. So that for many folks, they're thinking that they want to have more equity in their classrooms by going this ungraded path. And so they will talk about how they're managing that and how they're figuring that out. And then maybe some other assignments that can be included that are not heavy, that can quickly build equity within a course. All right, so let me see. And so we're getting to the final. Let's see, what time do we have? You know, I think that what we can do, perhaps, let me take a look here, is that you all have the link to this. So feel free to fill this out at your leisure. Once you start to think about it, maybe you go back and do some reading, or maybe you'll discover another tech tool that might help in terms of gamification. But I do want to leave some time for Q&A. And so what I'm going to do with your permission is to move on in the slides, if that's okay. Yes, okay. So here again, we have our quick equation of the lecture and the homework activities, which is a traditional way of viewing it. The flipped is going to be, okay, maybe instead of spending that hour lecturing in the classroom, I'll record myself lecturing it. I'll give it to my students so they can pause, rewind, take notes, and then they come to the classroom where then they can have these activities and we can have clarifying questions or answers. Maybe something I said in the lecture didn't quite make sense. Well, now we have time. We have more time in the classroom to go back and piece that out and hash that out. And so on campus, in person's collaborative, there's homework assignments and projects. At home online is reading, watching lectures. And what I typed in was discussion continuity, meaning that they're discussions that really are continuity of what happens in the classroom, or that is bringing back that loop into that. And then there's that reference there for flipping the classroom. And so for your final week, I'm giving this ahead. So we're just barely starting week 2, but I feel like it helps for you to keep the final in mind. You all do get the extension, 1 week extension. Our week 4 is during spring break, if memory serves, which is, I know, right? But feel free to reach out if you want. The module opens early. If you just want to really have truly a spring break, you can jump in the week before, finish everything that was there for week 4, and then have your extension, have your 1 week extension. So you really have been given agency here to work however it fits your schedule, especially as it's in a weird time. We do have those level up optional tools, and all that means is that you get to contribute. Some of it stays in the library to share with future BEHI folks. And then we have the equity self-reflection, and we also still have the support page. And then Ray mentioned that she's also working in a couple of capacities to help us out. So let's see. Those are working with your department. So all of this is also conversation then you're taking to your chair or to your dean in terms of the scheduling, how it fits the curriculum, how it fits with your online course of what is it, course online of record, your student learning outcomes, you know, what is happening in the hybrid scenario in terms of the classroom, especially just because of the safety, right? But like I said, that you really are the boss of this because you're at the forefront of this. So you're founding mothers and fathers of hybrid learning at your different campuses, right? And so right now you are the experts. And so that sometimes it just means having a conversation with the folks who are actually going to put that down on the schedule. And so it does take some last, some just fine tuning. And I think it's just open communication and conversations with folks. The same as we have conversations with our students in terms of our course policies and how we're going to run the show, because maybe my hybrid teaching is not the same as someone else's hybrid teaching. And so we just want to make sure the students come in knowing how we're going to run it. So that is the last slide, if memory serves. What I'm going to do is stop the share so I can take a look at all of you and see if you have any questions. Your comments, concerns. Yeah, it seems like you're all supported in your departments, which is good, which is really good. Yes, go ahead.
All right, I did my name is Chi Ju. I teach in the architecture program. And I did a poll today, ask students, I told students, I'm in your shoes, I'm a student now. and I'm taking this class, and I asked them like, what's your opinion? Right now, my classes are synchronous. We do twice a week meeting online, and then students do their labs. So I asked them what's their opinion about online, fully online, like we're doing right now, or hybrid or in person. I get 40% of the students wants to do fully online, 40% hybrid, and 10% wants to go fully in person.
Yeah.
And there's one student had interesting suggestion. She said, for hybrid, if we meet twice a week, for hybrid, then for her, it feels like in person. So she suggests maybe once a week would be a good reason. And I want to hear from some of your experience teaching hybrid. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
All right, I think we have at least 3 other folks here who are now teaching hybrid. So what is the feel for you, I guess? Does it feel like the students would like to have more in classroom time or more Canvas time? Is that it, Chi?
Yeah, yes.
Like, do you get a sense of that?
My students are definitely in the face-to-face category, but it's a 122L, so it's the 122 with additional support. So there's students who would have been in the past probably in a developmental level class, a more beginning class, and they're, because I've been asking them about it, and they are in this class because it was as close as they could come to face-to-face, and they do a lot better in the face-to-face component than they do in the online component. I don't know how much, I mean, I might have a lot to do with that because I'm learning how to do this, but that's what I'm finding with this population.
So they like that gentle touch. They really want to have that. So yes.
Well, gentle touch, but also sometimes not. Also the me being there, being like, get in my office right now, like the
I love
hands
that.
on. So it's actually, a lot of them are really appreciating. They sit like the accountability of seeing me, you know, what the hell, and that's working. And I'm doing that online as best I can, but I do better when I can actually, you know, take them by the scruff.
Right. That's a tough love, right? The tough love that begins with love, and that's what tough. Anyone else, Kaki?
I can't speak for my students because I haven't asked them, but it makes a world of difference to me to see them in person. And once a week, I feel like Heidi, because I see them once a week, I feel like I'm getting less done. It's just, I'm still taking me longer, and I don't know why. Maybe I need to learn more about how to do this faster, but oh my goodness, it's just hugely different and wonderful to see these persons. And I have a feeling that a lot of students like to come to school once a week.
Right, once a week.
But I haven't asked them. I'll have to ask them.
Ask them, you know, but I love that you mentioned that, because when folks used to think that online learning was like lazy teaching, I'm like, oh my God, it's so much more work. Hybrid is a lot more work. Hybrid is a lot more work than asynchronous online teaching. A lot more work. And so that's why you're all angels, because there's a commitment to student learning, student-centered learning. And what you've done is you're not thinking about yourself and the convenience of travel, not travel, of being on campus or not. You are thinking about what's going to help my students the most, what's going to benefit them so that they can have a successful outcome, right? And so it is a lot more work, and it's the same thing. Yes.
I also want to comment about student mental health. I think they need the socialization, being together, getting to know each other. And when I had my Zoom class last time, they all talked about, I asked them to write me a 3-minute letter, just tell me what you want me to know. And they all kind of said, like, I want to make friends. I hope I can make friends. So in this way, you know, once a week, we can do it.
Once a week. I think that maybe there might even be a greater appreciation, you know, like a happiness to see, like a reunion, a happiness to see each other, you know, and to be able to touch base on everything that's happened online since the last time, you know, you all saw each other. For us, we used to share news briefs. What's happened since the last time we saw each other? oh, we're at war. You know, that's what it used to be a lot, you know, because it's political science and we talk about the wars a lot. We don't really ignore a lot of that stuff. And so that sometimes it helps, you know, and then they would have time to share about their own personal experiences, not just the class experience. So yeah, so it is nice to be able to come together. Let's see, any other experiences or shares, or sometimes you don't even, your students don't even tell you, right? But you get a feeling. It's like a vibe that you get when students come into the classroom. Do they look happy to come into the classroom, or are they dragging their feet? Are they punctual to these class meetings, or are they just running in so that they can just kind of quickly touch base and then run out? You know, like if they feel that it's just an obligation to come in and to get out. Are students eagerly waiting for you to open the door? You know, so what have you noticed, if anything? No, maybe
I could
next
share
one.
some of my experience here.
Thank
I'm not sure if my microphone works really well. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you fine.
Okay. Well, in my experience, it's kind of split down the middle. I'm teaching an accounting class at Contra Costa College. And at first I got the impression that people were relieved to get away from the seclusion, but not relieved enough to be punctual. So so but then again, also I'm starting to discover that maybe there are some resources out there that deliver the content better than I. So I'm starting to lean towards even more towards a hybrid delivery, because I'm discovering that I can get videos and such from MIT and Harvard producers and such that I don't even think I could keep people away from that. I'm going to definitely support my class with that kind of content. So I'm starting to, this class has really been an eye opener, and it's hard to say, but I know at the beginning people were really relieved to get away from home. But if they're going to start finding out that they can get the type of education that is not only face to face, but they can get lectures brought to them from other top name universities that they never thought they'd have exposure to, that's a bonus. So I can't wait. And
That's really great. That's generosity of spirit, right? Old timey, I had professors who would hide their books. They didn't want to show what books they were using as resources. I know, I've got a whole thing on that, you know, and issues, but why? Because they wanted to be the controllers of knowledge, right? But for you to say, these folks at MIT and Harvard can explain this in a different way, that means that now they're getting a different, that they're getting it a different way. They're getting the same content explained differently, which means that you're reaching out to more students in the way that they learn best. And it also means that you can go and get basic foundational information videos, and then more advanced also, because then now again, you've got the widespread of all the learners in your class and not just the middle learners. Yeah, very good. And we've approached 7:05. Good. Can't seem to always make it into the hour, so apologies. But if there's a final comment here, and then again, I'm happy to stay and troubleshoot anything or answer any questions that you may have further. Let's see. Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for sharing. All right, well, have a beautiful, beautiful week, and I will see you next week, or maybe Thursday for office hours. All right, take care. Bye-bye.